Hey guys, Madison here, back to react to chapter 20 of The Mandalorian. Last week on The Adventures of Dr. Pershing. Just kidding. Last week on The Mandalorian, we had some really interesting threads set up regarding cloning, potentially kind of the origins of the First Order, corruption in the New Republic. We had some interesting stuff going on, despite it being a complete detour from the plot line we've been following thus far with Din and Bo-Katan. I'm excited to hopefully get back to the Mandalorian storyline this week because of the plot twist that occurred at the end of last week's episode with Bo-Katan suddenly joining the covert. I was like, what is happening? I really did not see that coming because of the ideological differences. But as some of you have pointed out in the comments, some things have happened that might have broken through Bo-Katan's cynicism that she has had toward Din and his cult's religious beliefs and faith and all of that. She has seen that the mythosaur is real. So, even though I still suspect her of having ulterior motives, you guys have made some good points about she might have genuinely had a change of heart here because of what has happened, what has transpired. So, I'm very interested to see how these relationships develop going forward because we have Jon Favreau plays Paz Vizsla, right? I could be totally wrong about that, but for some reason that was in my head. But Paz Vizsla has been an antagonist toward Din for a while now. He challenged him for the Darksaber in the Book of Boba Fett, and he still seems very offish and antagonistic toward Din, and I don't think he's going to be very accepting of Bo-Katan either. So I think there's still going to be some division and conflict going on. I have yet to kind of discern where all of this is going, but I am excited to find out. So without further ado, guys, let's check out chapter 20. I'm having Knights of the Old Republic flashbacks, and I love it. I love their warrior culture. It's so cool. I don't know if you want to eat that, Grogu.
Put down the rocks, kid. It's time that you learn with the other Foundlings.
But he's a baby. It's just gonna wreck him with a force push.
He challenges.
He is too small.
I am his ward. Proceed. One does not speak unless one knows.
Well, I know.
Perhaps this lesson is for you then.
You take it easy on him, kid.
Begin!
Don't look at me, look at him.
Ready.
Aww.
Begin! Point! Three points.
As long as they don't count the force as cheating, then he's gonna win every time. What? Oh my gosh. That thing just came in like Hawk swooping up baby puppy or something.
I'm out of fuel. It always gets away.
Bo-Katan's got the right idea.
I'll fly to the foothills. Scale the rest of the way on foot.
I'll join you.
And join the Shriekhawk training team to accompany you. All in good time. Come, Grogu.
Waddling through the sand.
Just as we shape the Mandalorian steel, we shape ourselves. We refine ourselves through trials and adversity. The Forge can reveal weaknesses.
Oh boy.
Get the youngling to Kellerin! Go!
Who saves Grogu?
Everything's gonna be alright, kid.
Who's that?
12:15. Cross them.
Wait. That looks kind of like Ahmed Best, but am I crazy? I'm gonna have to check the credits because I'm pretty sure. Oh, this is cool. Oh. That looks like Padme's ship.
They're right
Yeah.
behind me.
What about the others?
There are no others.
The Nubian.
Everybody out! Move it! Move it!
Oh, I love that Naboo blaster sound. My prequel nostalgia.
It is with these scraps of Beskar that I forged your next piece of armor. Mandalorian steel shall keep you safe as you grow stronger. Foundling Grogu.
Oh. Foundling Grogu. Man, that was such a cool sequence on Coruscant.
We'll continue on foot from here. Any closer and it will hear the ship.
It's gonna be a tough climb without using jetpacks or anything.
If we tuck in under this outcropping, we sleep out of line of sight and climb at first light.
We will make camp.
As Vizsla's being pretty cooperative so far. No trouble yet. We'll see if sparks fly around the campfire here.
When you get your food, you go off to find a place where you can take off your helmet.
You are the leader of the war party. You have the honor of staying by the fire.
That's so sad they all just eat by themselves. Speaking of the prequels, remember when they were scaling the exterior of the Naboo palace? It's much easier with theirs because you just held the button and it pulled you up.
I see a heat source there.
Wait until we clear the area.
He's my son.
Oh. Did not realize that. The babies.
She's alive!
Oh my gosh. This kid's gonna be traumatized for life. Oh. Okay. Whew. Job done. That was very Iron Man 3. And that was very Jurassic Park. Although you could say Phantom Menace. There's always a bigger fish.
I'm okay, Dad.
Thank you.
This is the way.
This is the way.
He should have a newfound respect for Din after that. Maybe they can be Mando bros now.
You have done the highest honor of the creed.
This is the way.
This is the way. You're in need of a repair.
Okay, that's gonna be freaking sweet when they're riding those things when they're older. Having like pet dragons.
Would it be acceptable to wear one pauldron of the Night Owl and another with the Mythosaur?
It is always acceptable to wear.
What would you say if I told you I saw one?
I would say you are very lucky. It is a noble vision.
But it was real.
This is the way.
No one's gonna believe her. She'd have to show them. Okay, that was Ahmed Best. I was convinced. That makes me so happy. I'm sure everyone watching this already knows, but he played Jar Jar Binks in The Phantom Menace. Well, I should say the prequel trilogy, because he's in all three movies. And I remembered that when they were doing like a Jedi Padawan thing at Galaxy's Edge, or was it? No, it wasn't at Galaxy's Edge. It was some like Jedi training kind of little short series I think they did in recent years. It was like a year or two ago, maybe 2 or 3 years ago now. But Ahmed Best played the Jedi training the young Padawans. And I remembered seeing him as that Jedi, and that was why I was like, oh my gosh, that's him. And so now that character is like officially shown up in canon material and not just in that. It was almost like a game show kind of thing, but not quite. I don't know how to describe it. I never watched it, but I remembered seeing him in that, and it's cool that his character has now been brought into like actual on-screen canon material. Really awesome. The hate he got back when he was playing Jar Jar Binks was absolutely atrocious, and it's not like he needed a redemption arc. Jar Jar Binks, the whole purpose of that character was to entertain the children mainly and make children laugh, which he never failed to do. But cynical adults always love to hate on Jar Jar Binks and say he was the worst thing ever. So, coming from me, Ahmed Best never needed a Star Wars redemption arc, but it's really cool to see him go from playing Jar Jar Binks to playing a really cool Jedi. Really fun to see. I always like seeing more of Grogu's backstory and how he survived and how he got from point A to point B. And I hope we get to see a little bit more of that, like where he went after he left Coruscant, how he ended up where he did. Because I feel like there might be a few more interesting stops along the way of that journey. And it's good just seeing him develop as a character, dealing with his past trauma and trying to find a way to move forward and become part of the Mandalorian covert now. And speaking of becoming part of the Mandalorian covert, Bo-Katan again just showed up in this episode and demonstrated some great leadership. She took charge, took initiative when the child was taken. She was the only one to think of using a ship to go and track the creature and find out where its lair was. I'm like, do these other Mandalorians not have ships? They have to have at least one ship, right? I was like, why have they never followed it before? Why do they always try their jetpacks when they run out of fuel? I don't know. But I loved seeing her take charge and put the hunting party together that was able to save that child. I did not realize that was Vizsla's son. That was an interesting twist there, an interesting thing, and it will definitely help Din and Bo-Katan in the eyes of Paz Vizsla saving his son. So I like seeing the Mandalorian bonding, though there's also, with all these rules and things, there's also a kind of distance between them. I don't know even know if you would call it distance. They're very stoic and they have these rules and strictures where it's like they're like brothers and sisters, they're family, but also they eat by themselves, and there's almost this kind of just hierarchy and distance between them in that way, even though they are so close in others. I wonder what's going to end up happening with the Mythosaur in this season, because Bo-Katan is really just kind of distracted with it, preoccupied with it, and probably wondering what she's going to do about it. I thought she was kind of keeping it as a secret to herself because, like, maybe I could tame and ride the Mythosaur and I can become Mandalore. But she shared that information with the armorer even before she told, like, Din. And the armorer obviously does not believe her. I don't think anyone will believe her. So I wonder how she will handle that information now, knowing or thinking that no one will believe her. I hope she tells Din at some point, because he's the only one who I think might believe her and at least be willing to go and look again. But yeah, I enjoyed that episode a lot. That one was very action-packed, exciting. I loved seeing, again, the Coruscant flashbacks, the return of Ahmed Best. I loved seeing the action of hunting down the creature and saving the Foundling. I love the action of hunting down the creature and saving the child and bringing home the baby creatures to train. That's going to be so awesome when they grow up and they're using them as mounts. So cool. It actually reminds me of the beast riders of Onderon. If you've seen that arc from the Clone Wars, they had creatures sort of like that with the wings and kind of lizard-like big that they rode, and that kind of reminds me of that. Super cool. And I just always love seeing the Mandalorian warrior culture, seeing them training and stuff and challenging each other is so much fun to watch. We are officially at the halfway point of season 3. I still don't know where this season is, where it's going to wrap up, because I always assume there's going to be more seasons, so I never expect them to totally wrap up everything. So usually there's kind of a contained within each season story arc, and I'm not sure where this one is going and how it's going to wrap up, because they threw in all that stuff last episode with the New Republic and the cloning and all of that. That makes me think they'll bring in something with the ex-Imperials toward the end of the season, but I also don't know. They could just be setting that up for next season. And maybe this season is more contained into just the Mandalorian story, like the story of the covert. But I have no idea where they're going with that. What end Bo-Katan is moving toward, and I'm just not sure. And I'm not sure if that's a good thing or not. This season has felt very kind of scattered, a little bit all over the place to me. I think that, now granted I don't have the whole season yet, but so far I think that season 2 and probably even season 1 was much, much stronger than this season. This one feels a little bit scattered. Like I don't know if they're quite sure what they wanted to do with it. Someone mentioned in a comment last week about the Book of Boba Fett kind of throwing a wrench in things, and I think that is true, because I think something happened. Like, we have this big moment at the end of season 2 where Din and Grogu are separated. And it feels like it's a big moment, right? Like, we don't know when they're going to see each other again. It was a really satisfying, emotional moment, seeing him go away with Luke Skywalker. And then the Book of Boba Fett really threw a wrench in things by putting Din and Grogu back together. And I'm like, well, now the moment at the end of season 2 doesn't feel nearly as powerful, because it was like, oh, they were separated for a few weeks or a few months, maybe, you know? So what I think happened there is they chickened out. Just my opinion. I think they were going, I don't know if it was Jon Favreau or Dave Filoni or both, who were like, let's put Grogu and Din on separate paths for a while. And then I think someone higher up chickened out and said, we can't have the Mandalorian show without Grogu. Will people still watch and enjoy it the same way if Grogu's not there? And they were like, we need to put them back together. So they kind of shoehorned that into the Book of Boba Fett to do it without having to take up any time in Mando Season 3. And if that is indeed the case, that would have caused a ton of rewrites on Mando Season 3 if they were originally writing it without Grogu in mind. Like, it's just Din. And to me, it kind of feels that way. It kind of feels like maybe this season was just supposed to be Din, and then they did a bunch of rewrites and changed it. I could totally be wrong about that, and I'm just off on a rabbit trail here, but that's how it seems to me. Because of what happened in the Book of Boba Fett, taking 2 episodes out of the Book of Boba Fett to, like, just throw Din and Grogu back together, that's how it feels to me. But again, I could be wrong. Just my personal opinion. And so I think that could be what is contributing to the all over the place kind of strangeness of the structure of this season, because this season is very strange in terms of its structure to me. We keep having a monster of the week kind of thing, and it's not like I have a problem with monster of the week. I have a lot of fun with them hunting and fighting these big monsters and everything, but it's also like I'm wanting more plot. And I'm not getting it yet. It's very... The Mandalorian has always been kind of more simplistic, but I want plot. And right now it's just kind of like a monster shows up and takes someone, or a monster shows up and interrupts something, or I don't know, I'm just seeing a lot of fighting of creatures and things, and I'm not seeing... I don't want to say too much because we're only halfway through the season, but also we're halfway through the season. And I can't help but compare it in my mind to like season 2, which there was just so much going on in season 2 and so many just really kind of earth-shattering episodes with the return of Boba Fett, the bringing Bo-Katan into live action, bringing Ahsoka into live action, and there was just a really great story going on with having Din continuing his feud with Moff Gideon from the first season. And this season, there isn't really an antagonist. There's not really an antagonist, and sometimes that works. For certain things, that can work. If you have, like, nature is the antagonist, or this, like, death or age is the antagonist. You can have sorts of things like... You can have things like that, but... I just don't feel like there's not an antagonist so far in the season other than animals, like creatures, monsters. And we sort of have the beginnings of like ex-Imperial First Order stuff going on with the ties blowing up Bo-Katan's home, Dr. Pershing being betrayed, but again, that's totally away from Din. That's not an antagonist to him. So... maybe that's why it feels kind of meandering to me, and that there's not a defined antagonist that they're like continually going against and preparing for, and I don't know. Let me know if you guys are feeling the same way as me. I think some of you are, because I've been reading your comments, particularly some from last week where I was like, you know what, some of what they're saying is harsh, but I can't disagree with it. And I don't like being negative. I don't like giving negative reviews, but I also have to be honest. I'm a huge Star Wars fan, always have been, and have always been a huge fan of this show, but if I'm being honest, and I feel like I need to be honest in my reviews, or what's the point? This season is definitely the weakest of the 3, and you always worry about that when shows keep going, because a lot of shows have a great first season, and then the second season you're like, ugh, or they have a great first few seasons, and then they really go downhill. I don't know if... I'm a little skeptical because of how the sequel trilogy went. They did not have a defined plan from the start, and that became very, very obvious. And I'm afraid the case might be the same here. Not saying you have to have... When you have a long-running show, you're probably not going to plan out everything. Like, if you're writing a book series, I can relate to that because I'm writing my own book series right now. You're going to have lots of ideas floating around. You're going to have, like, this thing's going to happen down the road, this thing's going to happen down the road. I'm kind of planning this arc. But you can't plan everything. I think there is beauty in the organic nature of the creative process of letting things unfold and happen as you go. I think that you're kind of almost harming yourself if you plan everything too concretely in advance. I think it's all a careful balance of structuring and thinking ahead and planning certain milestones almost, and then letting the organic, parts of it unfold as you go. But it's definitely never a good idea to just jump into the wide unknown and have no plan and no idea for where you want certain characters to go and where you want them to end up, that sort of thing. There's error in over planning and there's error in no planning. There's a happy medium. I have totally gone off on a tangent here, sorry guys, but my wheels have been turning. I wanted to give them several episodes to get into the season, like kind of see what is this season going to be. I didn't want to kind of judge it off just the first couple of episodes or something, but now that we're at the midpoint, I'm starting to judge a little bit. I'm starting to see the weaknesses of it compared to the other seasons, and it's not that I hate it. I don't hate it, but I don't necessarily love it either. I like it fine. I'm enjoying each episode, but I'm also like, where is this building to? Where is this going? And it could go a million different directions, honestly. But yeah, I'm enjoying it, but I'm wanting more. I'm wanting more depth, and I'm wanting more plot. I don't know how else to say it. I want more plot than just pew pew, and I think the potential is there. potential is there with there's really interesting stuff being set up with Bo-Katan in particular, and we'll see. There's really not much happening with Din character-wise so far in this season. No growth, because he's still adhering to the strict rules of his covert. He thought he needed to go bathe in the living waters to redeem himself, so he still thinks he has to adhere to all these rules. And now Bo-Katan is adhering to the rules. And I'm like, when is someone gonna break the trend and say, we don't need to abide by these rules? I don't know. I don't even know. I'm starting to wonder if they're even going in that direction. But I have rambled on long enough, so I should probably wrap things up. You guys are going like, how long is she gonna yap about this? But I hope you guys enjoyed this reaction. If you want to see the full-length version of this reaction, head on over to my Patreon, link in the description below. Be sure to drop a comment and let me know what you guys are thinking of, what you thought of this episode, what you're thinking of the season so far. Questions, thoughts, theories. I always read your comments, so thank you so much for leaving them. Thanks again, guys, for watching. I will see you next week for Chapter 21.